Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely wild, highly debated story of the man they used to call the King of Good Times. I'm talking about a guy who literally had it all. Luxury cars, private jets, an entire Formula One team, an IPL cricket franchise, and, one of India's most recognizable liquor empires. He was the undeniable face of wealth, success, and glamour. But that glamorous facade, it shattered. It turned a billionaire businessman into one of the most controversial figures in modern Indian history.
So, let's just dive right in. Here's the core question we need to answer about Vijay Mallya. Was he just a visionary entrepreneur who took a massive, risky bet that went south? Or is he directly responsible for one of the biggest corporate and financial scandals India has ever seen? It's super polarizing, right? So we're going to look impartially at exactly what the sources say to see how this massive empire was built and how it all came crashing down.
All right, Section 1. The Golden Era, Building the Empire. To really understand the fall, we've got to look at the launch pad. When Mallya inherited the United Breweries group after his father Vijay Mallya passed away, he completely broke the mold. Back then, traditional Indian industrialists kept a super low profile. They just let their balance sheets do the talking. But Mallya? He did the exact opposite. He built up this massive celebrity-like persona, surrounding himself with all the glitz and glamour. He was the life of the party. And he used that larger-than-life image to turn Kingfisher beer into an absolute powerhouse. For a lot of people, he represented this bold, entirely new generation of business leaders.
Which brings us to Section 2, the fatal gamble, Kingfisher Airlines.
Okay, so it's 2005, and his ambition literally pushes him to the skies. Now, at this time, his competitors are fighting this brutal, race-to-the-bottom price war with no-frills budget flights. But Mallya completely defies the industry standard. He launches Kingfisher Airlines to offer extreme, uncompromising luxury. We're talking premium in-flight experiences, top-tier entertainment, the whole shebang. And at first, people absolutely loved it. The airline won awards, it became super popular. But, as we all know, luxury comes with a seriously steep price tag.
Let's move to Section 3. The mechanics of failure, the aviation trap.
So what actually happens when you try to force extreme luxury into what is arguably the toughest industry in the world? Well, you walk right into a trap. Running an airline is notoriously brutal. You're constantly battling fluctuating fuel costs, insane competition, and these razor-thin profit margins, all while trying to navigate incredibly complex regulations. When you pile the massive overhead needed for Kingfisher's signature luxury onto that already fragile foundation, the math just stops working. And this is what triggered an inescapable debt spiral. Driven by this huge desire for rapid growth and market share, Mallya aggressively acquired Air Deccan. But here's the thing, that kind of massive expansion requires a constant, heavy influx of cash just to keep the planes in the sky and maintain the illusion of growth. With costs soaring and revenues barely hanging on, the company really had no choice but to borrow, and borrow heavily. So what looked on the outside like aggressive growth was quietly mutating into a severe financial crisis behind the scenes.
The end result? Thousands of crores in debt. It is a staggering number. Just to survive, Kingfisher started leaning heavily on public sector banks. Now, the initial hope was pretty straightforward, right? The airline would eventually turn a profit and pay the loans back. But instead, the losses just compounded, cash flow completely evaporated, and the debt ballooned to a level that was literally impossible for anyone to ignore. That leaves us to Section 4, the crash, operations collapse. The speed of this descent was just staggering. Remember, they launched with massive fanfare in 2005, but just 7 years later, in 2012, the whole situation boiled over into a total operational collapse. Employees weren't getting their paychecks, flights were grounded left and right, suppliers were demanding cash, and regulators finally had to step in. The airline simply stopped operating entirely. And by 2016, Vijay Mallya had packed up and left India for the UK, which forever altered the narrative of his legacy.
The fallout on the ground was absolutely devastating. Behind what was once India's most glamorous brand, you suddenly had thousands of stranded, unpaid employees, gutted investors, and public sector banks left staring at massive, gaping holes in their balance sheets.
Let's look at Section 5, the Great Debate, the ongoing controversy. So right after he left for the UK in 2016, a massive media and political firestorm ignited, and the conversation shifted entirely to who was accountable. Now, Mallya has consistently defended his actions. He argues that Kingfisher simply failed because of standard business challenges, really tough economic conditions, and intense industry pressures. He's maintained publicly that, look, business failures happen all over the world and that he's being unfairly targeted, especially since he says he offered settlements to the banks.
So we're left with this profound clash of perspectives. On one hand, Mallya is basically saying, hey, this was a legitimate, albeit massive, business failure brought down by market forces out of my control. But on the other hand, you've got furious critics and a public demanding strict accountability. And you can understand why. They are absolutely outraged that massive sums of borrowed public money were lost, all while the founder continued to project this highly luxurious lifestyle as his airline's finances were basically in freefall.
And this deep divide, it definitely didn't just stay in the court of public opinion. It triggered years of high-profile, incredibly complex legal battles. Indian authorities have relentlessly pursued efforts to bring him back to face proceedings, leading to all these extradition efforts across multiple jurisdictions. It is a massive legal saga that, honestly, still dominates financial news cycles more than a decade later.
Finally, Section 6, Lessons from the Fall.
Regardless of which side of this controversy you fall on, this story leaves us with some undeniable, universal business truths. First up, growth fueled by excessive, unmanageable debt is basically a ticking time bomb. Second, having incredible branding and massive popularity, it can never replace sustainable financial fundamentals. Third, never ever underestimate the brutal realities of industries like aviation. And finally, when a giant falls, the shockwaves hit absolutely everyone, from the employees and the lenders right down to the broader economy.
The story of Vijay Mallya really isn't just about one man. It's this profound study of risk, ambition, finance, and accountability. So as you process all the facts we've laid out in this explainer today, I want you to ask yourself, how should history truly remember the king of good times? Was he simply a failed entrepreneur who took a huge risk that just didn't work out? Or is he the ultimate symbol of a broken financial system? It's a fascinating debate, and the answer might just depend entirely on where you stand. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this incredible story. Keep questioning the headlines, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.